It's been over a month since I replaced the short block in this 1987 944 Turbo. It is finally time to give it its first oil change. It's 600 miles. The break-in period is done. I'm also going to be changing the oil pressure sending unit. I've been having some issues on the dash. The gauge is showing 4 bar PSI, regardless of how warmed up the motor is. Follow along while I tackle both jobs. So after 5 or 6 weeks after I replaced the motor in this 1987 944 Turbo, I have finally hit the end of the 600 mile break-in period. So that means it's time to change the oil. Now, anyone who has owned or knows anything about a 944, regardless if it's a turbo or a naturally aspirated car, understands how messy that the oil change can be on these cars. So you may not be able to see it now, but the oil filter is right there. So not only is it a little bit difficult to get to from the top, but underneath, it just opens up a whole other can of worms. So here we are into the front of the car, and everything that you see here gets covered in oil when you remove the oil filter. The oil filter is right up there. And when you remove it, everything pours down onto every component that you see here. There are oil lines that go to the external oil cooler. There is the power steering pump. And we are also going to be changing the oil pressure sending unit, which is right there. That also gets coated in oil when you replace the filter. So in order to change that, I have to at least remove the power steering pump, which is right here, and let that kind of dangle. So I'm going to have to take off the power steering belt. And that is in order to get enough room to get a wrench behind the oil pressure sending unit so that I can get that off and get the new one on. So like with any project in life, it is important to take things in steps. So I have already let the car warm up for a couple of minutes so that the oil will flow out. So step one will be to remove the oil fill cap. Then I will get underneath the car and remove the oil drain plug. And then I will remove the oil filter. So here I am underneath the car. There is the bottom of the oil pan. You can see the oil drain plug right here. It's actually a 17 millimeter on this car. On my 1987 944S, it was a 15 millimeter, so I don't know if this is just an upgraded bolt that was put on this car. I have my oil catch reservoir device ready to go. So let's crack this bolt and try to get the oil out and not make an absolute mess. So I put a paper towel under the oil while it was draining, and it looks extremely clean. This is 600 miles, and I know that's not a lot, but there is no glitter, nothing. So that's kind of a testament to the short block build that Brent at Adratus and his guys did. So while the oil continues to drain, I am going to get started on removing, or at least freeing up, the power steering pump. So there are a couple of 13 millimeter bolts. I'm going to remove this one here. There is one right here, and then one up and behind. And once those are removed, I can get this belt off and then move the power steering pump out of the way, and that should free up some access to the oil pressure sending unit right here. I'm also going to remove the 2 wires that go onto the sending unit. Those are what go to the gauge on the dash. They are either 7 or 8 millimeter bolts. They're very tiny. I might be able to pull off these boots here. You can see. So on one side there is a spade connector. I'll just pull that one off. But on this one, I'm going to remove the bolt. Like I said, it's either a 7 or 8 millimeter, but they're not too hard to remove. So I have the power steering pump removed. It is just hanging on by the feed line from up top, as well as the high pressure line on the side. I've also removed the two wires from the oil pressure sending unit. So one is a spade connector, the other turned out to be a 7mm nut. Now here comes the difficult part. So the nut to remove the oil pressure sending unit is actually behind it. It is a 24mm, and I have three different wrenches to try to get this off. So I have kind of your standard large 24mm wrench. I have a shorter 24mm wrench, and I have a stubby 24mm wrench. It is tough to get something in and up on that nut there to get that sending unit off. So I will do my best. I've done it before on my previous 944, but on a turbo, it's much more difficult because of the external oil cooler lines, etc. So wish me luck. I try my best to get either the stubby or the medium size or the larger 24mm wrench up on here, but I could just not get clearance to get that wrench up here on that nut. Now, mind you, it is a thinner style nut, so a traditional wrench does not have an easy job getting on top of it. So what I had to do was disconnect the sway bar. So I disconnected it from its mounts right here, as well as on the lower control arm. So my next step, though, is I think since I already have the oil drain, I might as well disconnect the external oil cooler line here. And if I disconnect the hanger here, that should allow me to move it at least enough to get a wrench up in behind the oil pressure sending unit and get that out of there. The oil cooler line is off. It is a 32mm on this end and a 27mm to hold the line on this end. Now that that's off, hopefully I can move this line enough to be able to get a wrench up behind. Well, the good news is I got it out. The bad news is I got oil everywhere. I was trying to keep the catch pan here between the oil cooler lines and the hole where the oil pressure sending unit is, and it's just not a big enough hole to catch all of it. So I'm just going to let it drain for a little bit, and I will just have to face the cleanup afterwards. So I'm going to go up on top and try to remove that oil filter now and see if, since I've already made a mess, I might as well just get it out. So to get out the oil filter, it's a lot easier to remove this line that goes from the ignition coil right here over to the distributor cap. So I'm going to use a 90-degree pick to try to get under here. It can be pretty challenging trying to pull this off of the distributor, but once I get that out, I will get a cap wrench down on top of the oil filter. But first, I'm going to try to put some paper towels or something underneath to try to catch the oil that's going to come out from that filter. So this is pretty unbelievable, but I was able to remove the oil filter without anything spilling on that paper towel. The only thing I can think of is because I pulled out that oil pressure sending unit, freed up any oil that was already in the filter and allowed it to drain out. So I would not recommend pulling the oil pressure sending unit every time you change the oil, but it definitely makes it a lot less messy from the top side. So I'm going to be installing a new Hengst oil filter, and I'm going to be taking some oil from the old filter to lubricate the O-ring on the new one. The new oil filter is in. I put it in hand tight and then put the wrench on it and tightened it maybe another quarter turn. You don't want to go any more than that. It's time to get the oil pressure sending unit back in. I am going with genuine Porsche number 928-606-20304. So this unit should actually come with a new crush washer, which it does. So I have the oil pressure sending unit back in. I was not able to get it torque down to whatever the proper spec is, just because of the lack of room, and I don't have the tools to be able to get a torque wrench in there with a crow's foot. My crow's feet wrenches are way too thick to go on the nut that's on the back of this. However, I was able to tighten it down. The key is to remove the oil line to the external oil cooler, and that way you can get a long wrench up behind it and behind the sending unit, and that way I was able to get it tightened down to the point where I'm pretty confident that the crush washer on the back is good and sealed. So the next steps I'm probably going to do off camera, but it's basically to start hosing all of this down with brake clean. I'm going to start with getting the power steering pump cleaned up and mounted back up, and then I will get going on reassembling everything else, including the sway bar, and we'll go from there. So we have everything back together on the underside. I have the power steering pump installed, the belt is installed, the front sway bar is installed. I have the bolt on the sway bar to lower control arm. I think it is 17 foot-pounds to tighten that down. So we are basically done with everything on the underside. So now all that is left is to fill the oil on the top side. So I'm ready to fill the car with oil now, and here I have 7 quarts of Valvoline VR1 20W50. This is the high zinc oil. This is typically the most recommended oil. So these cars take anywhere from 6 to 7 quarts of oil, given that the turbo has an external oil cooler, and the fact that not only did I remove the oil filter, but also unbolted the oil line that goes to the external oil cooler. I'm sure it's going to take at least 6.5 quarts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill it up with about 6 to 6.25 quarts. I filled the car up with 6 quarts of oil, so what I'm going to do now is start the car up, let it run for a few minutes, shut it down, let it sit for a couple of minutes, let all of that oil drain back down into the oil pan, and take another reading. In the event I'm at a little low, I will top it off. If not, we're good to go. Fire in the hole. Yeah, guess who forgot to plug in the distributor wire? Bruh. I almost made a comment earlier. I would forget to plug this wire back into the distributor. Now it should fire up. And I'm going to let this car run for a few minutes. I'll shut it down, let the oil drain back into the pan, and then take another oil reading. After letting the car run for about 5 minutes and letting it sit for about another 5 to 10 minutes, let's take a look and see what the oil level is at. But it looks like it is about a quart low. So I'm gonna go ahead and add about 1 more quart and see what it looks like. So I added about 3/4 of a quart, and let's see what it looks like. The car's been sitting for about another 5 minutes afterwards. We are right at the full line. All right, so what did we get done today? So we were able to change the oil. We have fresh Valvoline VR1 20W50 in the car. We changed the oil pressure sending unit. Unfortunately, that led to no change in the gauge. So the issue of high oil pressure reading on the gauge is either attributed to 1, the car just has high oil pressure, 2, the gauge itself is bad, which is highly unlikely considering I've already changed that gauge and the reading has gone unchanged, or 3, the wiring harness is not giving the appropriate signal back to the gauge, which is a possibility. This car has 171,000 miles on the wiring harness. So there's a possibility that there could be something going wrong there. So outside of that, I am super excited because now that the break-in period is done, I can actually give this car the beans. So now it's time to really put the pedal down and see what this thing can do. But that'll be in another video. So if you like this video, if this was helpful to you, please give me a like. subscribe, hit that notification bell so you are aware when I upload another video on this car or any other cars to show that you do not have to be a professional mechanic to do this kind of work. So I'll see you the next time.